What is up, everybody?
Hey, we're back.
What's up?
Yes,
What's going
sir.
on?
So today's going to be a really good podcast. We got a special guest. His name is Wayne Bettis. He's also the owner of Wayneos Custom Lures. It's a proud sponsor of mine. A little brief of what he's going to be talking about. He's going to go back from the history of bass fishing, kind of how things have changed, how things have got, and how things have improved, how things have got worse. And his knowledge of being around the sport for so long. And then he's going to kind of go into about how he started his business and why he does what he does with his business. So without further ado, let's welcome Wayne. How's it going, Wayne?
Doing great, guys. How y'all doing?
Doing
Fantastic.
pretty
Doing
good.
Well, did you get any rain up your way?
Yes.
Crap.
Just
good.
we got so much rain here it ponded up behind a 3-strand barbed wire fence. That's just how much rain we got.
Yeah, me and Cal about daggum drowned in fishing today in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm still cold.
I imagine so. Cause man, I'm telling you, it's rained. I was in Knoxville all day, and it was flooding down there. All the creeks are out of the banks here. But anyway, we'll survive. We always have, unless Noah comes back in with an ark.
Yes, sir. So before we get started, if anybody y'all watching have any questions that you want to ask Wayne, just let us know. Comment that below, and we'll pop it up on the screen. Let him answer it. But Wayne, how about we start off with just kind of talking about you and who you are and stuff like that.
Well, I started bass fishing when I was very young. Had a great mentor, a man named Don Carter. Bill Dance once said that Don was outside of Bill. Don was the best bass fisherman in Tennessee, and I got hooked up with him at a very young age, and he really mentored to me and taught me a lot about bass fishing, a lot about the art of bass fishing. And that you had to know a lot back in the old days.
Yeah.
You had to understand the bass, understand that an old fish is just like an old person. They don't move much, and you got to entice them. And but yeah, I've been bass fishing since probably we started out somewhere in the mid '60s, and saw the profession grow tremendously. I mean, it was unbelievable. And
Yes, sir.
so we can talk about some of the things back in I know it was '68. I fished the first BASS tournament, or Bass Tournament, Bass Angler Sportsman Society. Some people don't know what bass stands for, but Ray Scott started that many years ago. And so the first tournament I fished was in '68 in Eufaula, Alabama.
Mhm.
That's back. John Powell was there, Jimmy Houston, Bill Dance, the older guys. All of them were there. We we often talk about that. I saw Jimmy Houston in Knoxville at the at the East Tennessee Fishing Show a couple of years ago, and we talked about those days. And we talked about Johnny Morris was there selling lures out of the back of station wagon.
Yeah, that's
Think about
crazy.
that for just a second.
Yeah.
Bill Adar and Stan Sloan, Zorro Bait Company. They were selling spinner baits out of a back pickup truck. Can you
That's
imagine
crazy.
that today?
No. Didn't you say something before that, like, back then there was no tackle shops or anything like that for you to go buy your tackle? Is basically about who you know or anything like that.
I'm sorry.
I said, didn't you say before that, like, back then there was not many tackle shops and stuff like that for you to
No,
go and get your
no.
tackle and stuff like that?
The only place you could find tackle was at a boat dock or a hardware store. And all you could find then, really, there wasn't many lure makers. People like Hedden was in the business. Um, MEP spinners were in the business. But basically, all you had to fish with, bass fish, was rooster tails or MEP spinners or some particular lure that Hedden manufactured. Maybe sometime we can come back on and I can get a bunch of these old lures that I've got for many years and maybe show you some of them and talk about them a little bit. Um, Back in the late '60s, early '70s, Bomber really got big,
Hmm.
and the 600 series Bomber. You remember those? They
Yeah.
look like a torpedo and they pull
Yeah.
backwards, look like a crawfish.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever used a Mitchell 300 reel?
No.
Nope.
Well, Mitchell 300 was the Cadillac. I mean, it was the Cadillac in its day. It was an open face. I have cranked that Bomber, and it's a hard pulling lure to the point that the grease run out of the reel, dripped on your clothes. Then you
That's
get
crazy.
cranking that thing, with the pressure on it in the summertime, cranking that deep lure so hard that it would literally melt the grease and drip down on your clothes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Did you ever throw any of them, Wayne?
Oh, jitterbug.
Yeah, with
Yeah,
the
oh yeah,
hooks on the side.
yeah,
That's an
yeah.
old one.
Full moon, full moon. I saw a fish one time, and I'm not exactly. I mean, we're fishing, but we always exaggerate. But I was fishing in a full moon one night back in Panther Creek on Cherokee Lake, fishing a jitterbug, and I saw a fish come out of the water. And I mean, I wasn't crazy or drinking or nothing. This thing was 4 feet long. I never seen such a fish. It come out of the water. That I missed it. It didn't get it, but I found out later it was probably a muskie. It was huge. But there's things used to pop them things along the bank and late at night and full moon. Boy, they bust them. The old jitterbugs.
Speaking of baits, and I know you're kind of in the bait industry, what do you think about, like, the bait changing, like the lures designs and stuff like that from back then to now?
Well, the technology, and the knowledge. You guys know more than I'll ever know because I was limited. As I told you the other day, only thing we knew was blood, sweat, and tears. And get out there and just crank. And we fished 12-hour tournaments. We didn't fish 5, 6, 7 hours. If we fished a night tournament, it went from 7 till 7 a.m. weigh in. Day tournament 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now in the wintertime, we might have shortened that a little bit, but we just had to get out there and crank and do the best we could. But you had to have local knowledge of the lakes. For example, Cherokee Lake full stage is 1075 above sea level. I saw it in 70. Let's see. I believe no, it's 19. I believe it's 78, if I'm not mistaken. That might have been 68. It got down to 995. 995. That's 80 feet of water out of that lake. Now, can you imagine on a bluff and take 80 feet out of the lake?
Turns into a creek.
Yeah, well, at Morristown Hamlin County Bridge, you could probably wade across. You could certainly throw a rock across it or a baseball or whatever across because there's no riverbed. So we go down and we go on these islands and we cross-reference the barn foundations and the house foundation. And I've got a book probably 3 or 4 inches thick of pictures of these cross-references and a picture of these foundations. That's all we had. We had not what you got today. I mean, you can see what's down there, right down to a golf ball at 50 feet of water on a flat surface. We had nothing like that. So it was hard work. I mean, it really was.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know when you say about the baits, everything changes. And I think you guys fish, you know that. And fishing's like politics. Just about the time you think you got it figured out, it changes.
Yep.
Think about it. I mean, you caught them over here at noon today, and you go back at 2 o'clock, and they're not there.
Yeah.
And they're hitting something else.
And me and Cal kind of ran into that today too, because in practice and stuff for the past, like we practiced a little bit last week, and we were catching them a certain way, and then today we did that for 4 hours and didn't get a bite.
Exactly.
And we had to adapt and change, but without the technology that we have, we wouldn't know how to adapt.
I was fishing the old ABA. I see it was American Bass Association, and I did a practice the day before. I took a man jelly worm, cut the point off the hook. Okay, and I was fishing a ledge down the lake, and I got all kinds of fish hooked that afternoon. And I didn't hook them, but they bit the worm. And people on the bank was fishing on a point watching me, thought I was crazy because they'd hang on to it. They got the boat and they'd shake them off. Went down the next morning, run all the way down the lake, and didn't get a bite. And that thing was covered with fish that afternoon. So, I never know.
Yeah. Speaking of bass tournaments, you started the first club tournament in East Tennessee, correct?
We started in 1968 at Lakeview Fall, Alabama. Johnny Morris was there, Forrest Wood was there, Ray Scott was there. Ray had a vision, and his vision was to start a bass club in every town in America. I mean, he really believed he could do that. And so we talked, and it was a chapter of bass. They call it a chapter. You had to be a member of bass to be a part of it. And the $10 a year, some of you may won't go back far enough to pay that. You had to be a member of bass, and they would send your magazine. They'd furnish insurance for your tournaments, all that kind of stuff for $10 a year. And so I came back to East Tennessee and started the Pro Bass Masters of Greene County. That was in '69. And but we didn't have a lot of guys that bass fished. And if you guys go back far enough, you know what I'm talking about. People catfished, they stripe fished, or they crappie fished. And they didn't bass fish much because you couldn't get lures and they didn't have the knowledge. So what our club did was try to educate people and get them interested in bass fishing. And we got some of these guys that didn't have boats. And most of them had flat bottom or V bottom boats. I'm sure you saw them. The boat docks had them that you could rent. And my friend I told you, Don Carter, we went flipping Arkansas and bought one of Forrest Woods' first boat he built. 16-foot Ranger boat, looked like a pencil. Had a 115 root on it. Have you ever seen one? They don't have a cap on them. They're rough fiberglass inside.
And probably felt like you was flying with it too, didn't you?
Oh, it did. We did. Matter of fact, we got in a race down at Eufaula with Bill Adar and Stan Sloan. Locke got killed. It was the things have changed so much. I'll tell you, it's interesting to talk about the boats and how it changed. The first boat I bought, now you think about this, I saved my money. I had a 41 Chevrolet pickup truck. And I saved my money and bought at Spiegel Catalog Company. I bought a 12-foot John boat and a 3-horsepower Esca motor. And I thought I was in heaven when the truck pulled up in front of my house and slid it off in the yard. Now you know what you guys got today.
Yeah.
But I was it. And I loaded that sucker on an old trailer my dad bought for me and took off the Indian Creek boat dock and puttered around that thing and fished. And I thought I was in heaven. And today you could spend $50,000-$75,000 and you still don't have a good piece of equipment.
No, it's about ridiculous when it
Well,
comes to boats anymore.
when I used to own Tennessee Valley Marine here in Greenville, we would rig out everything, repair tilt and trim, stainless steel prop, everything for $3,250 out the door. I don't know what they cost today. $3,250 out the door for a power tilt trim. That was in late 70s, early 80s. I bet they're what? Probably 12,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
For that, of course, not many people buy that small engine anymore. That was a big engine back in this day.
Yeah.
So
You can get a 150 for around 13 now.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, probably at 115. I don't even know if I got them over that big, but or probably around 10 then. But it's changed. I'm telling you guys, it's amazing. I've grown through it and watched it, and and you got to give people like Ray Scott a lot of credit for that, and all these bait guys, Tom Mann, you know, Stan Sloan, Bill Adar's Oral Bait Company. They've been going back for 40, 50 years. Forrest Wood promoting. You know, when we went to Eufaula, Jimmy Houston said, and we were talking in Knoxville about this. It was the second or third tournament Ray Scott put on. He didn't have money to pay the prize money 2 weeks before. Didn't have the money to pay what he guaranteed. And Forrest Wood and Johnny Morris helped him out. From what now, that's what Houston told me. So I don't know, but
That's crazy. So, seeing tournaments like you did back then, did you ever think that fishing would be what it is today?
well, I didn't think it'd get any better than what it was back then, because again, we were fishing tournaments.
Mhm.
We had a local club that we would have 2 tournaments a month. Summertime we'd have maybe 4. We had 2 night tournaments, 2 day tournaments. I thought that was pretty good. But
Mhm.
to say what it is today, back then, I doubt. I don't think I ever would have believed it would advance that far. I mean, it's really advanced.
Yeah,
And
I mean, even here locally, there's 2 to 3 tournaments every single weekend.
you know, I told you earlier that we used to go down. Cherokee was my favorite lake. I used to live down there. Right, Gilmore's have a place out there at his dock when Leland Boggs owned it. And you go out there and fish all day. On Tuesday, that's the day that I always fish. You hardly ever saw a boat down that area. And go out there and fish all night, and you never saw a boat at night because they didn't have all this equipment. And they were afraid to run down in there. A lot of islands and rock bluffs, underwater. Depends on how the water level is. And they didn't know how to run it. So they stayed away from that. And they go up around, the bridge on up around Fall Creek and those areas. It wasn't as near as dangerous. But you get down that open water where all the islands were and stuff. I've seen a lot of bottom units completely demolished down in there. So
I could only imagine, because even with the technology we have now, running certain lakes and certain areas of even Cherokee still scares me, even though I can see exactly how daggone deep it is where I'm heading. So not having it.
Cherokee's the only one that I feel comfortable on, even with equipment, like you say.
Mhm.
I know the last time I was on Guntersville, I had navigation. You can set point A to point B, and it navigates, but you're nervous because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And, but Cherokee, it never bothered me. I've never had any problem down there. I mean, but I grew up on the lake, and but there's always a chance that you miscalculate a little bit.
Mhm.
But
My dad, he said night tournaments back in the day would have scared me not having GPSs.
oh yeah. Well,
A lot of praying and hoping.
well, and again, night tournaments, most of the guys, we had 30, 40 guys at one time in the bass club. It changed, by the way, it went from Pro Bass Masters of Greene County to the Greenville Bass Club. And the reason it did, a lot of the guys didn't want to pay bass $10 a year for whatever reason. And so they changed it after I kind of got away from it. And it was the first bass club chapter in the state of Tennessee that was bass affiliated. Now, there could have been other little local clubs I don't know about. But Ray Scott sent me a letter and said, congratulations, you have started the first bass chapter in the state of Tennessee. And Houston, I don't know, it's the fact, Houston, at that show, we talked for over an hour. And we were talking about that. He said Dance got mad at me over that because he wanted to start the first one. And I said, well, have him call me and we'll discuss it. But they don't do that anymore because there's bass clubs everywhere. And when you go to the lake, it amazes me. You can go down there on Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, whatever day you want to go, and the ramps are full.
You can about fish a tournament on either lake any night of the week.
Saturdays is just a nightmare. Yeah. I mean, come on. You'd be lucky.
I mean,
go ahead.
Even during the week, you go to a local ramp, and the ramp is loaded with boats. In the middle of a week.
Yeah. And again, Douglas or Cherokee especially, you go down there in the middle of the week years ago, and they wouldn't. You'd be lucky. See, only guy you'd ever see was a creel clerk. And that guy's, I don't know if they still use them or not. I hadn't seen one in years out there, but they'll come around and check you and ask you if you caught any fish and all that kind of stuff, and write it down. And I about got put in jail one time over that. Me and my buddy was fishing. We had a live well full of bass. He pulled up. Bill said, don't tell him we got any fish. He'll go put it in the paper and all that stuff. So I was sitting in the back seat and had my foot on the live well lid. And he said, y'all doing good? And Bill said, no, we're not doing good. Y'all, about that time, them fish started bouncing around that live well. That's what we got put in jail.
That's funny. That's funny.
But you guys, you got it down to the science. And, I don't know. I really don't know where we're going to stop. I mean, it's
because it's only up from here, honestly. Because I mean, if it's grown that amount of time, who knows what it's going to be like in another 10, 15, 20 years.
The pressure, though, I think has hurt in some way. There's not as many big fish. I caught an 8. I caught an 8, a 7, and 2 6 1/4 a month of November back in 1970. I think you got a picture of one of them there for that 8-pounder. And that was in November.
That one?
That was November 22nd, 1970. Yeah. We fished. I want you to look at something. Look at that. Look at those boats behind me. You can see them. I mean, those are top of the line bass boats in those days.
Yeah.
I caught that fish. We fished all night, November 22nd. And you notice I got those coveralls on. We had a little get together, about 5 boats of us, and we went down to Gilmore Rose Dock. We started at 7 that night, and that was about 7 o'clock in the morning. We put money in, and we paid for the biggest fish and the most fish. Number, not weight, but just biggest. And the half of it went to the biggest, half of it went to the most fish. And out of 8 people fishing, guess how many fish was caught? That one fish. That's the only fish was caught that night. And I caught it in 15 minutes before we quit that morning. Across the lake, we went up and pulled at a place and fished 1 cast and caught it. But and that fish was slim. If that fish had been in the summertime, when it was full, it would have been much, much bigger. I mean, it's like a stick. We weighed on a set of produce scales there. But the thing that fascinates me is the boats back behind me. And again, those are top of the line. Have you got a picture of that string that we caught? A friend of mine I caught holding it. I want you to look at that. The biggest fish there was a little over 9 pounds. That was the one on what you're looking at on the right. Another thing to look at, there's almost 60 pound of bass there, believe it or not. Now that's back when we could catch 10 apiece. I want you to look at my coveralls. that was what we wore back then. You look at that bass patch on the pocket.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah,
right there on your
chest. And you can see how hard I fish and how skinny I am. But we had almost 60 pound of bass there. Have you seen a string like that lately?
What was that, Cherokee?
That Cherokee.
Yeah. Good Lord. Yeah.
think there's any
They was
fish
caught on the
on
lower end of
Cherokee.
Cherokee. Sure was. And
Hey, Robbie, you got to catch up your game catching a bag like that.
well,
I ain't
back
seen no fish
then,
on Cherokee like that in a long time.
you won't see it. You won't see them anymore.
No. No.
That was and now don't misunderstand me. That was an unusual day. But what we did, we fished strictly islands, submerged islands, and we got into schools. And when one of them is down German Creek. When you come out, I call it German Creek Island. You come out in the dock heading the main lake. It's on the left, and the creek runs right by that island. It turns and runs out. And we caught a lot of those fish right off that creek bed. But on Little George's and 9 1/4 inch flip tail worms. You ever see one of them?
No.
Flip tail used to make them. We got to do this sometime and come back and maybe bring some of that old stuff and show you. It's pretty neat.
That would, yeah. Because with anything that I'm interested in, I love knowing the history and seeing how things have evolved. Like when I play baseball, I love seeing old pictures of baseball cards or old baseball bats, old baseball gloves, and all that kind of stuff. So seeing old lures and stuff like that, it's pretty amusing. And seeing how things have evolved from back then to now. And how many things stayed around from back then to now.
Well, fish are still fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they really are. One of the things I try to do when I paint lures and kind of got me into it is to try to paint some of the old stuff. I had a guy come to Knoxville 3 or 4 years ago, and you know how it is down there. I mean, it's just, you got them 4 deep at your table trying to get to see them. And this old guy come in, I'm standing there watching people, and he comes in kind of slow, and I'm thinking, well, he can't fish much. I mean, he was old, barely could walk. And he got a handful of them. He got 3 or 4 lures, and I thought, what is he going to? I thought he might be getting for a gift for somebody. So I went to check out, and I told him, I said, you going to do some fishing? He said, no. And he said, these lures remind me of some of the times when I did fish. And he said, I just want them for memory purposes. And I wish now I already rung him up. I'd give them to him if I'd known that, but it was too late. I already had money. But it's pretty amazing. Some of the lures that are still popular. And I try to paint some of those old colors. And I try to paint lures that are unique. You won't see anything that I paint in the store.
Yeah.
Because you guys go out and buy, and you know what I'm talking about, all of us. We buy a whole truckload of one if we catch a fish on it. And it's popular. And everybody's talking about it. And so those fish see 10 million of those lures in a day. You know what I'm talking about.
And you don't catch another fish on them.
And they just sit there.
And so I try to paint stuff that you've not seen before. And sometimes you'd be surprised how effective that is. But
I mean, I can't tell you how many fish I've caught on a ribbon tail worm, and you would know this. That thing's been around for a long time.
Yeah. It sometimes what I've learned from people like you guys, and I have people like you guys feed me information. I don't paint lures just for the fun of it. Now I enjoy it. Don't misunderstand me. I don't paint for the money. I don't have to. I do it for a hobby. And I donate most of my money to charity or people like Gavin to buy him a jersey or something. And I've got some other guys that we do. Keeby McCoy, you know Keeby, Gavin.
Yeah.
And
he's the one that won on Watts Bar, guys. He's the one that won at Watts Bar this year.
Yeah. And he and I get information from him. And so what they're hitting, and Keeby especially, man, he's after me quite often about certain colors that he needs and certain things that he thinks he needs. So we kind of paint stuff. I don't paint it for looks. I paint it to catch fish. Now I got one guy that wants me to beat them all to pieces. He don't want a new looking lure. He wants something that looks old. And so I do that for him.
And you see that a lot with companies now. They paint things or have colors to sell to the eyes of us instead of to the eyes of the fish. Because we don't think like a fish, and if we see something that looks good, I can't tell you how many times I've caught fish on colors that don't make no sense or are ugly.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what Tim like.
Cow can't see colors.
Yeah, cow's colorblind, so colors don't matter to him.
Hey,
Doug, can you tell me what
he's
color
buying a
this
purple
braid is?
crankbait, and it's actually a green.
We talk about color. I used to fish with a guy that was one of the best night fishermen I've ever fished with in my life. Spinnerbait, worms. He was fantastic. And I come out of Hardin County, Kentucky. He was a truck driver for Magnavox here for years. And he taught me a lot about fishing as well, but he was a dear friend. But he was colorblind. And he couldn't distinguish colors very good, especially if it was a grape and a purple. He could tell black or something. But I used to, I'd be catching fish on a certain color worm, and he get in his box, and he said, "Boy, what about mine?" I said, "I changed your lids a while ago." And then he didn't know for sure that I did. No, I didn't. I said, "Yeah, I swapped. He had it numbered on top of his lids, what color it was."
Me and Cal's got some funny stories about that colorblind because we'll walk in the tackle shops or whatever, and he'll grab up some weird color and go ask somebody, "Hey, is this, and this?" Or I feel bad for him because sometimes I'm sitting there holding his hand like, "Hey, this is this color and this is that color." Or there's been times where we've been catching on morning dawn. He goes, "Man, I found the morning dawn. It's like green pumpkin, red flakes." I'm like, "Cal, that's not even close."
We had a tournament, 6 club tournaments years ago, and I drew a guy out of Kentucky. But anyway, I'm going down the bank, and I'm throwing rattle trap, and this guy fishing on the bank. And I said, "You catching any fish, sir?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm catching a lot of them." I said, "What are you catching them on?" He said, "On a blackish white grub." I said, "A blackish white grub?" It took a long time to figure out what a blackish white glove was, but it was smoke's what it was. But he called it blackish white. And we're sitting in the boat trying to put our grubs, trying to find something with black and white on it, and we didn't have anything. I said, "You got anything blackish white?" But it was funny.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine Cal being colorblind and trying to bass fish. That's why I give him a hard time all the time because he's becoming a boater this year, not fishing colors. I said, "I'm gonna have to come over there for about a week straight and color code all your stuff so you know exactly what colors is what."
Imagine being his co-angler in the back of the boat. He's out there throwing something completely random.
or he has to turn around and be like, "Hey, what color is this?" And his colorman's like, "Oh God, what am I getting myself into?"
Yeah, so you're colorblind, Cal?
Yeah, only on a few colors. I don't know all of
Well,
them.
probably like my buddy was then, Cal. Well, don't trust him because he will mark and change your lid. Because that's the oldest trick in the book, son, to keep him getting beat.
Yeah.
You have to do what you have to do to win, boys, even if it is change lids,
I can tell from history with him. It's when you got two baits that are really, really similar, but they're just small changes. Like one's got like a fluorescent kind of look to it, or a shade of purple or something like that. You can't really see shades very well, right?
Mm-mm.
So all he sees is two separate colors instead of like possibly three with one like faded in there and stuff. So soft plastics are not that hard for you because you can read them and you kind of know what they are. But when it comes to crankbaits, plus it's hard.
Yeah, whenever there's a bag on it with words. We're good at that.
He don't know what green pumpkin. He
He
don't
can
know what
read.
green
That's
pumpkin
good.
red flake looks like, but he know it works.
if you ever get a Wayneos custom bait, Cal, right here on the back, it's got a number on it, okay? And it color everything on that label in there. So don't trust him. Just look at the label. If you get any, I'll glue your labels in because they do come out. But
That's funny.
here's one you'd have trouble with, Cal. It's a bluegill color, and it's got about 8 colors in it. Believe it or not, there's a lot of different colors in that lure.
What do you see, Cal? Black?
It's got black, green. I don't know. I just come up with it sitting in there painting one day. Got a lot of different
Black
colors.
and not so black.
Cal
You have a hard time distinguishing what color that is.
That one hurt my brain a little bit.
I got some black and white. I mean, it's you really need something simple.
That's all I need.
Truthfully, it's probably all you do need. I got to tell you, I had a friend of mine. We haven't had much luck yet, but I seen him down with just some blanks with hooks on to see if he'd catch fish on. Just blank lure, clear plastic. We haven't done anything yet, but part of it, he don't have confidence in it, so I don't fish it very hard, I'm sure. But it'd be interesting to find that out. See, bass fish, they bite for vibration. In most cases, that's their hearing, that vibration it makes, and it attracts them to it. That's what gets them to come looking for the bait.
Hmm.
And so when they strike it, I've always wondered if they strike at the sound as much as anything else.
I have heard that like clear spooks and stuff work because when they're looking up at it, they can't really see it very well because of the backdrop of it.
Right.
But they can see the action of it, which then makes them bite it because they don't have something to pick apart that, hey, that's not real.
Right. Like, well, they actually, I think they strike at the turbulence of the lure.
Yeah.
You know, the jerking of it and the water turbulence. Have you
What
seen
we
the
call as a reaction bite.
have you seen the video of the older guy that's laying down on a dock and catches a 12-pound bass with his hand?
Yeah,
did see
waving
that.
the little.
You seen it?
net.
You see what he does? He slaps the water. I mean, he kind of stirs the water. And that old bass comes up and he just grabs it. I don't know why we buy all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Man,
crazy how.
we can start noodle fishing.
They work.
Well, you were talking about your baits and stuff. You want to kind of talk more about like how you got started and your whole goal of why you
Well,
did it.
I'll tell you, I was fishing. I bought 6 rattle traps, and I probably ought to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. To fish a big bass tournament, that they had on Douglas, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I went out and I was down at Muddy Creek, and I'm cranking these rattle traps, and I've been using them for 100 years. All of us have, and now they're using a shrink wrap on them. I call shrink wrap, and the nose would wear off, and then the film would separate from the lure, and they just run to the top. So I contacted them and I said, "Hey, look, I bought 6 of these things, Bass Pro Shop, and the nose wore off, and now the film or the shrink wrap, whatever you want to call it, the skin they call it, is coming off. Oh, we haven't had a problem with that." And I said, "Well, you got one now. I know I didn't buy the only 6." But anyway, I got a little frustrated because they wouldn't admit they had a problem with it. And I found some blanks, and I thought, you know what? I've never seen a airbrush, but I'm going to try it. And I found out something I didn't know. I had a hidden talent that I didn't know I had. And that's how I got into airbrushing lures. And I've had other people that's better with airbrush than me, but they don't have the knowledge of how it needs to be. And that's what I didn't understand. Anybody just can't a lure. They got to have a little bit of knowledge of what it's supposed to look like. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I've got some here that are pretty, well, they're not unique, but some of you seen some of them. This is Crawdad Color Spring Crawl. And one of the things we do a little bit different is I coat all these lures. I make a lure as if I'm going to use it myself. And I use a epoxy. I use DevCon epoxy to coat those lures with. And what that does, all these lures, the blanks are made 2-piece, and they mold them together and heat them, and they'll separate. I'm sure you've hit a rock with one and busted it. You see what I'm talking about. So when you coat them with that epoxy, it glues those 2 pieces together and makes it much, much stronger. It protects the paint much better. Now, it still beat off if you beat it on the rocks long enough, but that's, and I can upgrade them. I think I charge $1 to upgrade them to KVD hooks, but they're still a good hook. It's on them. But somebody likes the KVDs, we'll go ahead and put for $1 more, put them on. But we got, when I go to the shows, I take about 1,500 lures. When I come home, I've got less than 500, and they really, people love them. And you can see some of the colors there; they're very unique. That's not colors you're going to find anywhere else. I went to Bass Pro Shop one time for a FLW drawing. You know how they go in the parking lot and draw out the drawing. And I had my back end of my Suburban full of lures. I had hampers back there with them. And when I left, I'd sold $180 worth of lures in the parking lot of Bass Pro Shop. Everybody was coming over. Once one found out, they was looking at them, and they come over. They bought hands full of them. But they are unique, and I don't have a lure anywhere or ever painted one that hadn't caught fish. Somebody told me about it, give me a color, and and we ship these things as far as Minnesota, up in New York, Florida, Texas. But there's a lot of people painting them now.
You got them in black chartreuse splatter or chartreuse with a black splatter back.
You say black with chartreuse back?
No, yeah, black back splatter back.
Oh,
black.
Black back. I may have some, but I can't remember. I'd have to go and look. I'd have to look on the website and see. We do have a website. It's called Wayneos.com. And right now, by the way, Gavin, you can post your code if we've got them marked down, I think 30%. And what is another 30% if you use your code?
Yes, sir. I have it scrolling across the bottom, and I put it in the comments. GC30 gets you 30% off at his website.
That's on top of what they already been marked down. Now they're not list price now. We marked them down. If you use his code, you'll get an extra 30% off of that. So I'm telling you, some of these lures are really cheap. And this is what we call a red eye rattler that he's showing there now. That one on the right, we call it the Ghost. Man, that thing has caught a ton. And that one in the middle with that purple back on Douglas Lake, I got a guy. You remember? Shoot, can't think of his name now down there. He set you up on Douglas, Gavin, I believe.
Yeah.
Shoot, help me remember his name. I'm embarrassed almost.
It wasn't Steve, was it?
No. Well, anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. My mind went blank. But anyway, he's wore them out on Douglas with those lures. There's one that's extremely popular, and you guys know about it, I know. That's a winter bait, muddy water. And throw it out and crank it slow. And this lure, this particular blank, it's quicker than a rattle trap. And what I mean it is, at a slower retrieve, it's still got a lot of quick action. If that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. It wiggles faster. If you pull a rattle trap and that lure at the same side by side, the same speed, this is going to wiggle more. It doesn't take as much speed to make it wiggle. And so slower when the fish are wintertime or the fall or whatever, when the water's cold, the metabolism slows down. They're not going to hit anything fast, and y'all know that. You got to put it right in their mouth and slow it down. And that's a great lure for that this time of year. We sell a lot of those in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. I know we talked about this yesterday on our meeting, but I got a cool story about the first time I ever really talked to Wayne and how I kind of got introduced into knowing him and his baits. I was fishing on Dale Hollow for a high school tournament, and we only had one fish, and my uncle bought one of his baits either at the East Tennessee show or somewhere online or maybe, and he gave it to me, and I actually picked up his bait and caught the last fish that got us into the high school national championship. And me, little high school me, had a little interview with Wayne at the East Tennessee show. And I know all these boys here want to find that video to have some dirt on me because I was young and still had a cracky voice. So yeah, about 20 pounds soaking wet.
He's got the video.
All we gotta do is go to your YouTube and scroll back a few years.
It's not on my YouTube; it's on my Facebook.
You know, he's making fun of that, but he did a great job. I'm being honest with you. If he didn't, I'd be joking about it too. But I thought he did a great job for his age, and he wasn't nervous. He just told the story. And his dad come to me earlier and told me, "So you got to talk to my son." He said he told me the story, so I said, "Well, get him over here." And so we filmed him and we stuck him on there. And I think that We ran that on our website too,
Yeah.
and then but anyway, I I'm gonna be honest with you, and I hate to be that way with this kind of show, but but the fact is, I told the folks down there that day, I said, this guy's going to go somewhere. I don't know why I felt that. I mean, I've come in contact with a lot of fishermen, but I just knew he had it in his heart. And I think you guys know that better than I do. But there was something about him that set him aside of a lot of younger fishermen. And I really believed. I told him all that. I said, this guy, you mark my word, he's got it in his heart and he's going to get it done. And you have to have it in your heart if you win.
We can keep him from getting neck surgery from live scope.
Yeah, well, that's true too. If I'd have known he's going to get that, I'd have really known he was going to win.
I do appreciate that, Wayne.
He don't want my opinion about that, but
We fired up. Get him fired up.
but I'm gonna tell you like it was. I know the first depth finder I ever saw was at Ray Jefferson, little brown box with 2 lamp batteries in it, 6-volt lantern batteries in it, and it was in the creek boat dock. And my friend and I came in that day. We were crappie fishing. This guy had a whole string and said, "Golly, what'd you catch him?" He said, "Well, I found him on the fish finder." Now, keep in mind, we never heard anything like that before. Well, let's see it. So we go down this little brown box and had a little old shaft and clamp on the side of your boat and run it down in the water, and that's your transducer. And so we bought one. Finally found somebody sold McClunes in Knoxville had them. We bought one of them, and that was the first depth finders. And so everybody then they started coming out. Lawrence came out with them with flashers, and then they put them on the high speed transducer. Everybody was fussing about them then. That's unfair. So, in all fairness to these guys, I've heard that for so many years, and in a way it is unfair, but you got to upgrade. I mean, let's face it. And right or wrong, it is what it is.
So going back, because you've seen it from having no depth finders but a flasher to now it is. Every time they came out with something new, was there always an argument about you're cheating or you gotta?
Most of the time, when they first came out, that you could mount it up on the console of your boat. They had a low speed transducer. In other words, they wouldn't read at high speed. So when you idled, you could see what the depth was. I remember when they come out with a high speed transducer, it was pointed. First ones was just a round puck. And then when they created the high speed, people fussed about that. Now they run up down the lake, it's unfair, So yeah, to some degree, almost every time they upgrade to get better stuff, people complain. I mean, I play golf, and the same thing in golf. You can buy a game, they say, you spend $500 for a driver, and you keep it a year, and then it's outdated. Same way with your bass equipment. I mean, it really is. And what do you do? Just not buy it? I mean,
yeah, it all comes down to either being able to afford it or.
Well, now here's the other side of that. I think we got to be real careful about when we're competition, because what does you say the unit cost now? What, $6,000-7,000?
So the live scope setup that I have is going to range around $4,000.
Well, that's not as bad as I thought it'd be. Now I hadn't bought it in years.
Now I got the middle range of depth finder for my live scope. Now you can get all the way up to where it takes 6,000 just to get one graph.
Well, the only problem with some of that, I think, is you're pricing your press out of the market for people, the masses that might want to compete. The average guy, the average fisherman, is not going to spend that kind of money. I mean, if he can afford it, he's probably not going to spend it. So you take those people out of the mix. Now, if you want to get up into the major league or something, then I understand you got sponsors. Most of them don't even pay for them anyway. Lawrence or whoever, or Garmin or somebody, furnish them. So in competition, I got a little bit of problem with it. It depends on what level. But I still believe if they were smart, they'd start a senior tour.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But
Robbie would be first in line.
most of your average boats that's tournament fishing right now, they've got either 4 or 5 graphs
Yep.
on their boats.
I got
Big,
5 on mine.
Brig Hennessy.
We know.
Hennessy
know.
Outdoor. Hennessy
You
Outdoor.
got 4 or 3?
got
Who?
Three. Okay.
I got 2. I got one on the console, one in the front. And that's it. But I got a piece of junk. I mean, come on.
I don't even know if
I
you
got
film my
HDS.
podcast
I got
on track.
HDS 12s and thought I had the best in the world when I put them on there, and I did have side scan and all that on it. But Brig Hennessy, he moved down here from Pekin, Illinois. A friend of mine, good friend of mine, and he used to have raffles on Saturday night. You send in $10, and he would raffle off a depth finder or how much money he took in and give it all back. And he'd video the whole thing, so it was legitimate. He'd show everybody's name on his table that paid. He'd pick them up and put them in a thing and then pull them out and win. But he wanted to get into this business. And so he sold out in Pekin, Illinois. I told him, I said, you got to get down here where the bass fishing is. And he went set up on Chickamauga down there at Dayton. And he's got Hennessy Outdoor Sports. And you need to, if you don't know him, you need to get on his website and look at it. The rigs he is fixing, I mean, it looks like a radar ship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And to speak on him, me and Cal, he's a great guy because me and Cal were fishing a college tournament, and we had practice on Sunday because the tournament started on Tuesday, and we ended up busting a prop on our trolling motor. We didn't have no extra prop, and nobody else was open. Well, we give Hennessy a call, and he actually answered because he was in his shop working on something, but he was closed. But he opened up for us to come in there and get a prop, and he fixed this for us. And then another instance, I had a fuel filter go bad, and he had a fuel filter laying around the shop. Went in there, gave it to us, and changed it for us and everything, and never cost us a penny.
He's a super guy.
Mhm.
I sent a guy to him after he opened up down there. He had a rough time. He built a building, and right in the middle of the building, the whole roof collapsed in on it. Every time he turned around, he had all kinds of bad luck. He went to, I called him when he first moved. We had the first show in Knoxville. I said, Rick, you need to get up there. You need to be up here at this show. So he got a booth right beside mine because I was kind of helping him. He had a whole trailer load. I think it was 22 feet, 20 feet trailer, full of trolling motors and depth finders, a new pickup truck, parked at a hotel right out the road from where the show was, and came in the next morning and they'd stole his truck and the trailer. Everything he had in that trailer. Can you imagine that?
Holy crap.
And at the same time, his building had collapsed a few weeks before, but he was going through this, is what I'm trying to say. But he stuck it out and he stayed with it. And so he's a great guy. I tell you, he is great enough that I put his link on my website. If you need that stuff, pull it down. If you need stuff, go to this guy. They're good at what they do. They're really good at what they do. Very
They
neat.
are.
And I sent a guy to him, Tom Helton, the one out of Ohio, and he fixed Tom up. And Tom was in a tournament somewhere, and something happened to his depth finder. I'm not sure what it was. He called Brig, like you was talking about. He called him, and Brig walked him through what to do on the telephone during the tournament because he was down. He couldn't even operate, and helped him get it hooked back up properly and got him on his way because he had an emergency. He couldn't run because he didn't know where he was going.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the kind of guy he is. And you know that better than most, Gavin.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be wrapping it up. Wayne, we really appreciate you coming on here. We'll definitely have you back on here. We'll talk more about those old baits you have and more fishing stories and stuff like that. But again, guys, go over to Wayneos Custom Lures. Check them out. If you use my code GC30, it gets you 30% off on top of the percent off he already has on his website. Great stuff. I believe in it. I've said this before. I don't promote things that I don't personally believe in or use. So go check them out. Again, Wayne, thank you a lot for coming on here.
Hey, before we go, I gotta give a shout out to Rogersville City School girls basketball team won the state today, and
Wow.
Bulls Gap finished second in the state. The boys did, and a shout out to Josh Short on that win at Fort Loudon.
And
That's
anybody out
That's
there,
2 in a row.
if anybody out there says that you can't beat these pros or get so mad about pros fishing these tournaments, Josh Short beat Ott the Foe.
Oh,
He's
I
beat
did.
him twice.
On a lake that he won the Classic on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but he's got
I
two
mean,
live scopes.
Somehow I knew that was good. I knew that was going to be said. I don't know why, but I knew it. I'm going to tell you something. You can take all the live scopes. You can take everything you want to take, but there's 3 P's that's more important than anything else, in my opinion. That's the ability to proceed, to shoot. I lost my train of thought. But you got to have the desire to win. And if you don't, I don't care what you got. And you know this. You guys have fished long enough to know if you got a lure that you catch fish on, you'll feel every wiggle of that lure, and you'll make sure it goes right beside that stuff. But it's something you don't have confidence in. You have to have a desire to persist, to persevere, and to prevail. That's the 3 P's. Persist, persevere, and prevail. If you go out on the boat with that, no matter what you got, you're going to catch fish if you stick with it. And but he's got that, and I'll bet you. and that guy over there on the end's got it too. I've seen it in him a long time. You guys too, I'm sure.
To close it out, do y'all want me to show you the video of the interview?
Oh yeah, show it.
I had to show it on my phone because I don't know how to connect it over there. But
Oh, who's that boy? Woo!
This year, Alabama Nationals
You got to hold in front. There you go.
We can't hear him.
Can't hear you yet.
He did good. He really did.
Was that a Daniel Boone jersey?
that was David Crockett. I don't wear that in Crafty Red.
Watch your mouth.
No trailblazer.
Go Chiefs.
Guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Let y'all go. I've talked the whole time. You haven't talked to me, so I'm gonna back out of here. I appreciate your invitation to come, and I'll be glad to come back. And I'll bring a bunch of old lures, and we could talk about. I think it'd be fun to talk about them, and some of you probably seen a lot of them, but I'll bring some of those back and we'll take a look at them. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
I
good.
hope you enjoyed.
Sounds good.
We try to give you the floor to kind of let you talk about you and promote Wayneos and stuff like that. So like I said, we'll get you on here again and join our normal kind of podcast where we just sit around, tell stories, and joke around.
It's always fun. And that's why we all do it. And I know you guys do, because if we all expect it, it's sort of like when I tell the guys playing golf, we're never going to be as good as we used to be. So we just rather enjoy the memories. So,
and that's kind of why we started the podcast, because we used to call in a group call, literally all 4 of us, and sit there and just talk fishing stories, shoot the crap, anything like that. So we're like, let's just make this public, put it on podcast, sit around, talk, chit chat.
I'm not sure I would have told that, but that's okay.
Okay,
guys. Thank you, guys, and I appreciate you inviting me on, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. Okay.
Awesome. All right. I thank you again.
Good to see you, Cal, and Dustin, and Rob, and of course Gavin. So we catch you later. We're going to zero out of here.
All right.
I'm gonna watch Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. See y'all.
See ya.